The prisoner wishes to say a word.
Hello, friends, and welcome to Service of Change's Changecast, the podcast for change. I'm your host, Dennis Nappi II, with Service of Change, where small changes among the masses can have a massive impact around the world. I am really excited for this evening's show. I have a new friend of mine who's really excited to come and actually join the Service of Change team as part of our Changecast members. His name is Joel Shafer Harris. And I'm going to give a little bit of background on Joel and let you know what he brings to the table. And we're going to get to talk to Joel tonight and hear all about him and his interest in helping us out. So without further ado, let me run through the bio that Joel has provided for us, and we can kind of get to know him and see what he's going to bring for us. So Joel is a writer, an artist, and aspiring new media communicator. He has a bachelor's from Penn State, an MFA from the New School. He has an associate's in psychology from Delaware County Community College. He's also worked in the mental health field. He worked in the field of mental health and drug addiction, and he's mentored people in the recovery process of addiction. He is a near encyclopedia of information about spirituality, religion, politics, history, and literature. And I have to say, from following him on the Facebook feeds, he definitely has a wealth of knowledge in those respective areas. He's also a self-described provocateur. I'm going to give Joel a minute to explain a little bit about his background as he talks about himself here. I'm curious to hear what he means by a self-described provocateur. So without further ado, let's welcome Joel to this Changecast here. Joel, welcome aboard. How you doing tonight?
Good. How about you, sir?
Not
good
too
to be
bad.
here.
Good. I'm glad you're here. Quite an interesting bio that you have as I'm going through it here and taking a look at it. Let's start with this self-described provocateur. Why don't you explain that to me?
Well, some of the people in our audience might be familiar with the term troll. A provocateur, I think it comes from the French and originally in the Latin. It means to provoke. So a provocateur, often in its historical context, was somebody who would come along and maybe rile up the masses, like Jonathan Swift. Voltaire was a French provocateur. So it's somebody who, unlike a troll, actually will have good intentions in trying to provoke conversation and even controversy to get the discourse, get the overall conversation in a society or even in a locality going. So I consider myself a little bit of a provocateur.
Kind of like a hype man.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a good analogy.
Okay. All right. I like that, and it's inspiring those. But you're using your powers for good, I guess you could say. You're not just trying to piss people off, which is a surprise because you're from Upper Darby, and I think we have a lot of provocateurs in that neighborhood, which is where I grew up as well.
I gotta admit, I don't always do it for good, but I try to do it for good. We've all had moments where we provoke mischief for mischief's sake, and sometimes it's harmless and sometimes people's feelings can get hurt, but I try to promptly go and apologize if I've hurt someone's feelings either in real life or in the on the interweb.
That I think is the difference, and kind of what we like about that at Service of Change is, being able to recognize when you've gone too far or you've offended somebody, because like you said, we're all human beings and we all get hit with that emotion. And sometimes we go too far across that line. But being able to step back and humble yourself and say, hey, I'm sorry, I went too far. I found with my students that they're not used to men apologizing. And when I am wrong or I offend somebody, I'll be quick to say, hey, my bad, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. And it's a great teachable moment there. So we have the provocateur. I definitely appreciate that. And I'd like to see what kind of things you're going to provoke with our listeners here tonight and in future Changecasts that we have coming up. So I also see here that it stands out that you've worked in the mental health and drug addiction field, and you've mentored people in recovery. What's that been like for you? How'd you get into that?
Well, there's a little thing called anonymity, but I'm free to break my own anonymity. So I had my own problem, and then when in the process of getting help for myself, I through a 12-step program, I entered into that process, and one of the features of that process is when someone gets some experience and gets some distance from their addictive behaviors, they can voluntarily, get into service. And getting into service, you can do it either directly or indirectly. In fact, at the meetings, it's often everybody's in service to each other, just showing up. But you can be what's called a formal sponsor, and I think nowadays in our culture, enough like the whole mechanics of that milieu have people are familiar with. But yeah, I've sponsored people, and I've just generally helped people in and outside these meetings. Just people in general. I try my best to just be part of a community, whether it be somebody at work or someone in my family. I do find people, coming to me asking for my help, which, and this is why I'm so attracted to like what you're doing and your background, Dennis, is that, I see in your experiences like a range of experiences that I've never had, that I feel like, if nothing else comes of our endeavor or my involvement in your endeavor, that I would at least be able to like learn some new tactics and some new skills to enrich other people's lives and to help other people, because there's a lot of suffering out there in the world, a lot of unnecessary suffering. And I could go off on a tangent about that, the difference between necessary and unnecessary suffering, but I want you to like pace this thing that we're doing right now.
Absolutely, Joel, and I think that thank you for your compliment, first of all. But I think that it takes a lot to do what you do and to be a sponsor, for people that are suffering from addiction. I know I have limited experience with that, both as a former police officer and as a friend. I've watched people go through that, and it's not easy dealing with that. So to be that voice, to listen to somebody when they're going through such a difficult time, where a lot of times the stories that they're telling you and sharing with you are just so hard to listen, especially when it's personal and somebody that you care about. So I give you a lot of credit for doing that. And
Thank you.
And sometimes that simple act of listening, as we say all the time, small changes can have a massive impact. That small change, being that one ear that listens and saying, hey, I've been there and I got through it, it is sometimes the difference between somebody picking up and using again that day and somebody saying, you know what, I'm going to get that strength and make it through another day.
And if I could just interject something really quickly, like my observation sometimes with a lot of people, like when they're dealing with people who've gone through grief and trauma, or like just say like, someone they know has experienced a loss, like a death. A lot of times people recoil from doing other than perhaps like the I'm sorry, I'm stumbling over my words, but the formal like condolences, like I'm very sorry for your loss, because they feel like there's nothing they can say. Mm-hmm. But in my experience, you don't have to have anything to say. And that goes across the range of even people that are just struggling with addiction. Sometimes just listening, that you don't need to say anything other than I hear you, I understand, or ask questions like, well, how are you feeling? Or like, what happened? Like, or when did this start? Like little things to let the person who's sharing their story with you, let them know that you're there and that you're present. And I think we live sometimes in a society that's so accustomed to a quick fix that we think we have to be the fixers. Yeah. So a lot of times we will shunt off our responsibility, like, oh, well, go get a grief counselor. And I'm not saying like people with serious grief problems do need counselors, and there are professionals for that. But sometimes we don't have to fix the person. And in fact, sometimes these things aren't fixable. And it's life is sometimes like a vigil that we hold with other human beings. And so it's closeness, it's proximity, it's empathy, it's a lot of nonverbal things. It's that connection between two human beings that is a lot of things other than just verbal.
What is it? 97% of communication is nonverbal anyway, but everybody thinks, oh, I got to talk, I have to say something. You said that awkward moment when somebody dies, I'm sorry for your loss. You really don't know what to say, but
Yes.
like you said, you don't have to say something. Sometimes just a hug or a handshake, or like you said, just listening. Sometimes I don't like to say I'm sorry for your loss. It just doesn't always feel right to me.
Sure.
A lot of times I'll just say, hey, I'm thinking about you. If you need anything, hit me up, or I've been through this before, it sucks.
Absolutely.
That's it. That's all you need to say to people, and sometimes that does volumes for people, just being able to understand and to listen to them.
Yeah, and if they want to talk, they will. A lot of times they will.
Right. Yeah.
They will ask you. They will ask you can you come over? Can you talk to me?
Yep.
And it's like, if I think communicating that, like, because sometimes I know for me, like if someone says, "Oh, I'm here for you," sometimes I'm like, they're just saying that.
Hmm.
But I think most people are actually sincere about that. And I think a lot of times when you're like, and this goes for people that don't have addiction problems. Like, I think sometimes we're afraid to reach out for help. And perhaps that, in our new society with all the gadgets and all the wealth we have, and we live in one of the probably the wealthiest country in the world, we've lost that sometimes have lost that sense of community where, it's a two-way street. And me and you were kind of talking about that, when you were telling me about your experiences in the classroom, that like, what I'm trying to say here is that, if anybody listening ever has a moment where they're grieving or going through something, don't be afraid to ask for help. That you'd be surprised how many people will help you. And also don't be afraid to be the helper. Mm-hmm. So it's like on both ends. And I think to connect that, you were telling me about, your pupils and how, sometimes you had such resistance that you just kind of had to, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you kind of had to pick your battles. That some of your pupils were just not going to respond, and so you kind of had to get them to meet you part way. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean every kid was different, but I always pick and choose my battles. And in some battles I say, is this a battle worth fighting? Is this a battle I can win? Is this a battle that they're going to benefit and that anybody's going to benefit from? And I try to take it as, if it's not going to be win-win, then I'm not even going to get into that battle. It's not worth it, And you kind of, as I'm sure you understand which ones are just worth getting into. Sometimes a cry for help, that's all that's needed. That person just needs to cry out or cuss you out or whatever, and then it's over. And you got to be able to separate from that and say, well, okay, you did just cuss me out, but you're having a really bad day, and if I engage, it's just going to go really bad. If I just step back and tomorrow I call and say, hey, I'm sorry if I upset you, it totally diffuses everything, So there's different approaches depending on the situation.
And I got to tell you that right there totally fascinates me, Dennis, because like there seems to be sometimes like I'm an observer of people, and whether it be through a book or through my own experiences, and I see sometimes a tension between masculinity and compassion. Mm-hmm. And like, I gotta admit, like, I grew up in a household where it was the other extreme, where compassion was everything. Mm-hmm. But I got to the point where the outside world was telling me that was weak, and in all honesty, sometimes it was. Like, mm-hmm. my father and my mother sometimes were too nice to people. They got walked over sometimes. Like, they didn't adequately prepare me for Upper Darby. Yeah. Like, there was like, I mean, it was just fighting, and I was like, whoa, everybody wants to fight me, and I had to learn how to fight. And
right.
And so, like, when you talk about somebody like a child cursing you out, and you standing your ground there, but also like forgiving them for that, and then you also had alluded to earlier how, like, saying sorry, and that in some aspects of that subculture sometimes is seen as weak. So it's like, I wonder, did you have experiences where you not responding to them using verbal aggression or even physical aggression, whether that how did you navigate how you felt like you were messaging your masculinity, so to speak, or your strength or your authority in those situations? I love
that question, because it's something I think about and I model every day when I'm in the classroom, especially when I was teaching in Philadelphia. I was there. I did a couple months in Philly, actually, at the beginning of this school year too. And when I have a disagreement with a kid, and once it's over, once everybody's calm, I bring them back in the room. If it's specifically to the male students, because we're talking about masculinity.
Sure.
And I, number one, if I have to apologize, I look them in the eye and I say, look, I'm sorry. I have no problem saying I'm sorry. I'm still a confident man. I'm still in a position of authority. And they see that over time, that, well, Mr. Nappi is still maintaining his status as a man, but he humbly apologized to me, and that I didn't lose any respect for him whatsoever. But the other thing I make them do, or I ask them to do, I say, look, we come up with an agreement. Hey, we're going to talk about this. It's over with. Because after the incident, I always have that compassionate piece where we sit down and talk about what happened. I make them stand up. I make them look me in the eye. And make them shake my hand. And I say, and that's exactly what I say to them. I say, look me in the eye like a man and shake my hand like a man. And if you're sorry, I'd like to hear it. That's what being a man is. And I have that talk with the students and letting them know that being a man doesn't always mean getting into a fight. That's a man that's not thinking. You need to choose your battles, because what I tell these kids, it's real. You may get in a fight with your fists here, and you may get shot on your way home.
Yes.
That's the real deal in those neighborhoods. In Philadelphia, it's no joke. So I try to show them in all of my actions and interactions that being a man does not mean you know how to fight all the time. Being a man is manning up to what you did and taking responsibility and ownership over your own actions, whatever the cost of that may be.
And in all fairness, I just realized something that that I wanted to point out, that from my experiences with urban culture, living in Upper Darby, that has changed dramatically in the last 10, 15 years. We don't always, as the supposed, responsible, professional people from a better, arguably better, maybe more middle-class background, we don't always have all the answers, and it's not even necessary that we're imposing, a better way of doing things on them. That it was very interesting when you said, shake my hand like a man and look me in the eye like a man, because I don't think that that's foreign to their own culture, if that makes any sense. So
right.
I think that a lot of these same issues are going on in their culture, and so it's like, it's not so much that we're going, or you were going in there, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you were going in there and just being like a depositor of wisdom and truth, and they're all chaotic. That there was probably, how do I say this? There was probably threads or impulses or influences that you could probably observe in the students, where some of these same, their own community and their own families, when they were there, were teaching them their own, some good values that you could possibly
relate to
or use. And that was something. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I was saying.
No, I just wanted to say one last thing, because that was one thing when I was a drug addiction and mental health counselor. What the newest therapy was called motivational interviewing, and a lot of it said, because it was the same thinking, that if you set up a paradigm with the counselor, where the counselor is an authority, sometimes you can be kind of like talking down to or subordinating the person. And so sometimes it's an art. It's less a science. It's an art of asking the person, well, what works for you? Like,
put them in
what
charge.
has worked for you in the past? And you ask them, well, what do you want to do? And if they say something that seems pretty good and they agree on it, and then the next day they act differently, you call them on that and you say, hey, so-and-so, yesterday you said you didn't want to use drugs. In your case, yesterday you said you wanted to do your homework. What changed? So you're not asking them to adhere or comply to your vision for their life or your value system. You're getting them to formulate and articulate their own vision and their own set of values for their life, and then you're holding them accountable to it. Does that make sense?
Joel, it makes perfect sense, and you want to always have them feel empowered. You never want to be, even as a quote-unquote authority, you don't want to act like you're that, or exert that on people. Hey, I'm the authority, I'm in charge. I like to give students options and choices and allow them to feel that they're empowered. And I think that's something that I learned when I went through the counterintelligence school with the Army. It was always try to get to know the people that you're dealing with and find out what motivates them, and let them, in that case, it was have the illusion that they're making choices, even though you're guiding them to make a specific choice to do your bidding. But it's the same thing that I do when I talk to anybody. I want you to feel empowered. I want you to learn, that you are in charge of your own life and your own destiny, and feel good about what you're doing. And then, because then when they make that choice, when they make a mistake or fall off the path, like you said, you go back to them and say, look, this is what you wanted. I'm trying to help you do what you asked me to do.
Yes.
And that is better than saying, well, I told you to do this. Nobody likes that, because then it puts them on the defense.
Or saying, I told you so.
Yeah, you don't want to have
I told you were going to fall on your face if you did that.
Right, and that just makes you got to think, strategically, and you got to think, do I want to have an argument here, or do I want to help somebody? And if you're in a business to argue with people, then turn off this podcast right now. It's not going to help you at all. But if you really want to help somebody, you want to find the best approach at all times, no matter how mad it may make you. What approach can I take that's going to allow this person to get the most benefit out of it? By being confrontational, in most situations, that's just going to put them on the defense and shut them down. You know,
Sure.
You want to empower them every step of the way. You know, so I just want you to hold that thought. We'll pick up right where we left off. I got to take a quick break, and we'll be right back after this.
I challenge you to try to teach them, encourage them and listen to them. Listen to their stories of home with drunken mothers, jailed fathers, and bullet-filled brothers. And once you have become a part of them, once you have given yourself to them, then I challenge you to come up with a plan to help them. I was trying to prove something that I was told didn't exist. The threat was out there, and I needed to find it. We heard screaming coming from the inside. My smile disappeared immediately, and I pounded hard on the door. Nobody answered, but the screaming continued. It's interesting to note, however, that regardless of how well your class is behaving and how well trained you think you have your students, your carefully constructed order and structure that you have worked so hard to build can be destroyed in a moment. Hi, I'm Dennis Nappi II, author of Service, A Soldier's Journey, Counterintelligence, Law Enforcement, and the Violence of Urban Education. What you just heard were quotes from my story. If you'd like to hear more, you can find my book at serviceofchange.com, at amazon.com, and wherever books are sold. Thank you.
Okay, and welcome back to Service of Change's Changecast, where small changes among the masses can have a massive impact around the world. I'm Dennis Nappi II with Service of Change. Just want to give a quick reference. If you want to reach out to us, you can definitely find some exciting things that we have on our website at serviceofchange.com. If you want to get an archive list of all of our Changecasts, you can go to serviceofchange.com/Changecast, where you'll find a little bit more information about myself and about our new co-host, Joel Shafer Harris. He's joining us this evening on our introductory Changecast with him. You can also follow me on Twitter. That's Dennis Nappi II. It's spelled Dennis Nappii. And like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Service of Change. We have a lot of exciting things that are going on. I'm constantly making changes to our website and updating, because my goal is to make coming to serviceofchange.com a really good experience for our readers, for our followers. I want it to be everything real easy to find, real easy to use, and I want you to keep coming back to see the new and exciting content, whether it's our articles, whether it's our podcasts. Through our Twitter feed, we have every single day, we have what I call thoughts for change that are coming up, and they're inspiring quotes, to help motivate you that day. This was inspired actually by my brother, Mike Nappi. He does Nappi Words every day. Give him his shout out. That's well deserved. And we have Lori Latimer, who writes haikus every Tuesday, and we use a lot of her 575s to kind of inspire our followers and our readers. So it's well worth checking out. If you want some daily inspiration, follow us on Twitter, Dennis Nappi II, and you definitely won't be disappointed. So I'm going to get back with Joel right now. We were going through Joel's background. He's got quite an interesting background. We were talking about dealing with people in conflict, people in crisis, and the best approaches to take in helping them out. So just pick up where we left off, Joel. We talked about before the break was that you want to keep somebody feeling empowered, and when you're speaking with them, as opposed to talking down to them. Anything else to add on that area, or do you want to move on to a different subject, or what?
Well, no. I mean, I think that's like what attracted me to what you were doing, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to join you in what you're doing. Was this, my imagining what you must have gone through, and also, reading, some of what you've written, watching some of your videos, listening to some of your podcasts, and it was like you had said when we were trying to set up this technology earlier. You had talked about like coming from a regimented background in the military, and to jump from this idea of like having compassion and trying to empower people, like it's very incredibly intriguing to me to wonder like at what point like did your impulse to regiment or your military background come into like was there a time in your classroom when it was like the drill sergeant has to come out because there's too much chaos going on right now. Like compassion, we're going to back burner that, and then, like take no prisoners, but I'll apologize later. You know what I mean? Like for like an emergency situation where you kind of have to triage and you're like, I got to get in control of this situation.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'd have to say, in some of the schools I've taught in, I considered every day triage. Every day there was a crisis, every day there was a problem. I talked a lot about it in my first book, Service. When you read that last section of the book, day after day, there's violence, there's threats, there's so many problems that are going on. I actually have gone into what you called, what I also call drill sergeant mode, where I just got to lay down the law, and that's more to restore order.
Sure.
I found as an experienced teacher I have to use that less and less, but there's still times I had to bring it out in September, beginning of the year. Students don't know me and they want to show that they can run the show. I have to show them, hey, here's that regiment, here's that order. But that compassion is always there. I teach because I care. I don't teach because I want to impose my personal values on people. I teach because I see a real problem with our students. They're struggling. Most people don't care about what they're going through. These kids, and
they know it. Not to interrupt, but they know it.
You're right.
And that hurts.
So I have to go in there and show them, you can count on me. I'm going to hold you accountable. I'm going to help you, but you also can't cross me that way. I have a standard that we're all going to adhere to in order to all improve ourselves. So that compassion is always there, but that Army or cop mode can come out at the drop of a hat if I need it to. But then as soon as that's done, as soon as that's over, I scale it back. And I always say that. I say that, when I talk to police officers, come in, establish your authority, be safe, but then you have to scale it back. We're coming up almost about out of time. I got about 3 minutes left, but that's my most important thing, is that be that authority, but scale it back as soon as you have that opportunity to do so, and show them I still care. That's what people need to hear, is that I still care and I'm still a human being.
And real quick, just like, this is the type of thing that I think, once again, is going to help me at least. But hopefully, if we can build this thing, this is going to help other people, because I don't think that this is secluded or restricted just to that urban teaching environment. I think these questions of how you balance strength and compassion, and balance rules and the greater good, and all these different questions. These are the very questions that have always been asked by human beings as they try to live together and try to be happy together and try to prosper together in history.
You're absolutely right, Joel, and I think that as the goals of these Changecasts continue to go on, we're hoping to inspire people to make that small change, whether it's being extra polite to somebody or going out of your way to help somebody during the day, and we'll talk about more things that we've employed throughout our lives, and have some guests on in the upcoming episodes that we're planning. It's going to be really exciting what we have on the future horizon for us. So if you're listening, please spread the word. Share it on social media. I can't encourage you enough. Subscribe to our newsletter, because that's a sure way that you're going to get these sent right to your inbox, because social media, with Facebook looking for money, they don't always give it to everybody that subscribes to our Facebook page. So the best way to guarantee is just go to serviceofchange.com, click on the newsletters link, and all we need is your first name and your email address. You can even make up your name. Just give us a valid email address so we can stay connected and help share that information and spread the word. And anything that you see that you think is somewhat remotely interesting, please like it, please share it, please retweet it, please. I'm sorry, I just hit my hand on the table. Please, do whatever you can to help us get that word out. And again, small changes among the masses can have a massive impact around the world. So we've got about a minute left, Joel, before we get out of here. Is there anything else that you'd like to say?
I would just say that, going forward, to connect with what you were just saying, I want ideas. I want, if somebody feels that they have something that they want to offer, that if they want to be a guest, hit us up. We'll consider it.
Absolutely.
Am I wrong?
No, we're looking.
I didn't vet that with you before the show. It just kind of spontaneously came.
No, we kind of talked about it, in a roundabout way. If you have either a personal story of a small change or a difference that you've made, or an idea, anything, the worst that can happen is we can say, it's not going to work for us. But we're looking for guests. So if you have something that you want to share, like I said, please send us an email. You can reach Joel at serviceofchange.com. His link's going to be up on our Service of Change page. You can reach me, Nappi2, at serviceofchange.com, or easy to remember, service at serviceofchange.com. And, we'd love to hear from you and hopefully have you on the show. So that's pretty much all the time we have for right now. Again, I'm Dennis Nappi II. I'm here with Joel Shafer Harris. This is our Changecast. We're really excited to be doing what we're doing. Please stay tuned for future things that are coming up. Also, please check the serviceofchange.com webpage for my newest book, The Urban Educator Survival Guide, 7 Proven Strategies from a Successful School Teacher's Classroom. Teachers, you can subscribe and get free resources for teachers. They're very helpful with classroom management. Great for new teachers as well. That's all the time we have. Again, thank you, Joel. It's an honor to be doing this with you. I'm really excited about what we have set up for the future. And
thank you. The feeling is definitely mutual.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to it. And like I said, we're out of time. So thank you to all of you out there that are listening. We look forward to hearing from you.